On today's Locked On Jayhawks, we recap Hunter Dickinson going off as the KU seniors led the Jayhawks to a big-time victory over the Arizona Wildcats on Senior Day.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on? Derek Johnson here. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Thank you for making it your first listen every day. Thank you to everydayers catching each and every episode of the show. Wherever you join us, whether it's on our YouTube page or anywhere that you listen to your podcast, thank you for tuning along. On today's episode of the show, we are recapping the Kansas-Arizona game and going to talk about how the seniors led KU to a big win on Senior Day, what this win means for KU moving forward. Is it proof of them actually playing better ball? And as we look back to this new season approach, what has now gone on over really a 5-game sample for KU. We'll get to our game awards and what is next for KU with the Big 12 men's basketball tournament happening in Kansas City this week. First, the episode of the show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins with FanDuel. So KU keeps their historic Senior Day streak alive. They also were able to push their 20-win season streak, kept that one going for KU. Also looks like a win like that will assure that they won't have a new low for worst seed. The worst seed Kansas ever been, I believe, is an 8 seed in an NCAA tournament, and I can't imagine you'd be any lower than that at this point, based on how you finish the season. I don't know that you'll even be lower than a 7 seed at this point. But Bill Self kind of said it best about what led to this 83-76 victory for KU. He said, "That was about as well as I can remember seniors playing on senior night. They carried us, but yeah, it was nice. We needed that bad, and we needed our best players to carry us, and we needed everybody else to play well, really well, and that's exactly what happened. Hunt was unbelievable." And so it was the game about the seniors, and one of those seniors was Hunter Dickinson, who was fantastic for Kansas all throughout the game. I mean, literally historic performance from Hunter Dickinson, because he goes for 33 points, he goes for 10 rebounds, he goes 15 for 23, so very good efficiency to get to those 30 points. And he had just one turnover. And this is after the Houston game where he had, 6 or 7 turnovers, and now you come down to one in this game. I mean, he was dialed in from the get-go and all throughout the game. And according to Evan Miyakawa, he is the only Big 12 player, Hunter Dickinson is, to do that, I guess 33 or more points, 10 or more rebounds with just one turnover or less in at least 15 years. So it is a very historic performance that Hunter Dickinson put together, and he carried the team in a lot of ways. Obviously, there were other really good contributions from some of those other seniors for KU. Now, what's interesting is I think I brought this up. I forget if it was the Houston game or maybe the game before, but maybe it was the Texas Tech game. I brought up the Dickinson dilemma, I kind of called it, where I said Hunter Dickinson is almost like, it's like having Alex Smith. You can build stuff around him and win a lot of games, but there are going to be certain times where, Alex Smith is going to face Tom Brady and you're not going to have the best quarterback in the game, right? And Kansas brought in Hunter Dickinson with the idea based on, how they build the roster around him and the amount of money you're probably paying him to be more of the Tom Brady, Peyton Manning type quarterback than the Alex Smith, more the Patrick Mahomes type quarterback than the Alex Smith, right? And so Hunter Dickinson's been good for Kansas. He's been so productive and stuff. But there are certain nights, like you look at the Texas Tech game, where you go in and say, okay, but, Hunter Dickinson, really good player. Was he the best player on the floor between the two teams? There's no question in my mind who the best player on the floor was for the Arizona game against Kansas. It was Hunter Dickinson. He played like the best player on the court. And so that dilemma, so to speak, didn't become a thing anymore. He was the best player on the court. And I think, honestly, I feel more vindicated in that conversation from this quote from Bill Self after the game. He said, "I told him last night from the team, you've done a lot of good things since you've been here, but I haven't seen you put a team on your back and carry us over an extended period of time. And today was a pretty good start," because he definitely did that. And I fully agree. That's what I'm saying. I've said all along, Hunter Dickinson, very good basketball player, very productive basketball player. But that's what I've been talking about there, that if you're asking him to be your best player, you need him to be the best player, right? On certain nights and on majority of nights. And again, he was by far the best player. And so if this is going to be a run where Bill Self has challenged him and he is going to do this night in. Obviously, you're not going to get 33 and 10 every night, but are you going to get a super locked in, super productive, even more so than we've seen in the past, Hunter Dickinson moving forward? Then that could be the best player on the court each and every night for KU, and that does change the precipice of things in games going forward, which is huge. He was so money. The hook shots, the mid-range shots were phenomenal for Hunter in this game. So just really, really impressive performance from Hunter Dickinson. But yeah, there were other seniors that were huge contributors here for Kansas. You look at what Zeke Mayo did from a scoring perspective after having maybe a couple more down games for his scoring. He comes in and he goes 5 of 7 from 3-point range. He scores 20 points with 6 assists, 0 turnovers. So, 4 rebounds to go with it. Like, Zeke Mayo was great for Kansas in this game. It felt like he was hitting some really dagger after dagger threes when you needed to. KJ Adams, the big thing with KJ has always been like, can he be, at least, right? If you're going to play 2 bigs, usually the positive of that is going to be, your rebounding is going to be excellent. And when KJ rebounds well, it makes it more doable for KU. And he did, again, 8 rebounds, 12 points, just big dunk after big dunk. If you're looking at box score plus minus, KJ Adams was the best player for the game from that, one flawed step, but plus 17 to go with as well, 3 assists in the game. So KJ did a little bit of everything when you're talking about one of the other seniors. Dajuan Harris had a game where he was 4 of 9 from the floor, so, solid efficiency there. But he hit a 3 for you, which haven't always been falling this year. Maybe that'll start a run for him, right? Can he get closer to a 40% three-point shooter than a 30%, right? But he had 9 points, 9 assists to just 1 turnover. And that's huge numbers on senior day for Dajuan Harris. And so the seniors are why you won this game. Obviously, Hunter Dickinson is a gigantic portion of this, but you put the stats together because there were 4 seniors who played in the game for KU. In total, there were 8 players who played for Kansas. 4 of them were seniors, 4 of them were not. Now, I guess technically Diggy Coit is listed as a senior, so it would be 5 seniors played and 3 didn't. So let me rephrase, because we'll get into this a little later in the show. Diggy Coit, it sounds like he's going to be coming back next year, the extra year of the JUCO stuff. So you basically had 4 players who were being celebrated on senior night who played in this game, and then 4 players who were not, who can have another year of college basketball or at KU. And the 4 players who were celebrating senior night who played in the game, they had 74 combined points on 30 of 50 shooting. That's 60% on 74 points. The other 4 players, so that would have been Storr, Coit, Badunga, and Griffin, had a combined 9 points from 4 players on just 3 of 17 shooting. That's a gigantic difference what you got from those guys. Now, can those guys continue to do that? Can they now play with hair on fire? Can they now view this as, hey, our college basketball careers are getting close to, ending here, right? You got to play with your hair on fire. You got to play with that desperation. And when this team does play with that desperation, a pretty darn good team and pretty tough to beat. The fact, too, that Kansas led this game in points off turnovers, which is they've not been forcing turnovers. That was a big boon for them. Second chance points. Arizona, great offensive rebounding team. Those are huge for what I guess KU doesn't do typically and what Arizona does. And that's another reason that you kind of won the game. So bottom line here, that's a huge win in so many ways for Kansas. This isn't just a huge win for this team, because it is. This is also a huge win for the program. And I know it sounds silly to be like, oh, this team's now 20-11. What are you talking about? Big program wins. No, it is, because it extends your senior day winning streak, I believe, to 42, right? You can't keep the streak going unless you win the game. That is huge for the program, right? That is huge for future years of the senior day streak to keep going, right? It extends your 20-win season streak. That is big for the program, right? And then, again, just for this season, it is massive. It probably, to me, I think secures you as at least a 7 seed in the NCAA tournament with maybe a chance at a 6 seed, kind of depending on what happens in the Big 12 tournament. Who knows? Maybe even with a really good run in the Big 12 tournament, even up to like a 5 seed or something like that. So I think those are good things if you can get on that 7 line or 6 line as opposed to being on the 8 line where you're playing a 1 seed possibly in the second round. Like, that's a much better place to be. And it gives you another tournament win. Or a win over a team that's going to be in the tournament field, I guess you could say, because those have been lacking. I think it's just Iowa State would classify there since December. So that it just gives you extra momentum headed into the postseason, headed into the Big 12 tournament, where you feel like you can make a run now. You can do some damage, especially knowing they are kind of sitting in front of you if you can win your first game. But we'll get to that as well as game awards coming up next. This is Locked On Jayhawks. This episode of the show is brought to you by Roy. Attention, Locked On Jayhawk fans. Ever wish you could directly support your favorite Jayhawk athletes to be part of the journey? Now you can with Roy, the NIL app that puts fans in control. Before Roy, NIL deals were often handled behind closed doors, and fans like you didn't have a clear way to directly support the players you love. Now, with Roy, you can make a real impact and feel closer to the athletes representing the Jayhawks. With Roy, you get to choose the players you want to support, decide how much you want to contribute, get exclusive content straight from the athletes that you back. And the best part, if your player transfers, you get your money back. So it's a risk-free way to show your support and make your voice heard. Support your favorite players directly and help shape the future of Jayhawk sports. Download the Roy app now from the App Store and start backing Kansas athletes the way they deserve, with transparency, trust, and real impact. This is the future of college sports. Join now by downloading Roy and supporting your favorite players for your favorite school. Continue on here on Locked On Jayhawks. Thanks for making it your first listen every day. We will have a path for the Big 12 full episode coming at you on tomorrow's show. We'll have a preview for KU's first game coming out on Wednesday. Obviously, we won't know the opponent till late Tuesday night, but that'll be the situation for KU, and then they'll play Wednesday. If they win that, they move on to the quarterfinals Thursday, and we'll have you covered with previews, postcasts, all that sort of stuff this week on Locked On Jayhawks, and also get you ready for the NCAA tournament this weekend. So plenty of content coming at you throughout the week here on LOJ. All right, game trophies for Kansas taking out Arizona 83-76. I did want to mention the senior speeches. What were the best senior speech moments for KU? Not necessarily like, I actually thought there was going to be, between either KJ Adams or Dajuan Harris, I thought there was going to be a moment of like tear-jerking stuff. It didn't seem like KJ or Dajuan are the type of guys that wanted to fully get into that type of stuff, that some of the stuff they've had to gone through. Like, obviously KJ, it's very public, everything he's had to go through with his mom and stuff. And, you know, with it being public as it is, like, he probably doesn't want to go back into it. With Dajuan, there's some, you know, stories that have been written, and I don't think people talk about this enough, that this dude was, you know, not in a good situation in some of his growing up areas, and wasn't academically eligible to play, and had to deal with that his first year in redshirted. And that was something he mentioned in the speech, which I thought was really cool. I think of the academic guys, that he didn't just become, okay, now I'm skating by, now I'm academically eligible. Like I guess I don't know what the grades are like this year, but I believe last year he had like the best grades on the team, or like one of the best, maybe this is 2 years ago I'm thinking of, but like that is such a cool story. And when we think about, we've gotten to a point now with like college sports where it's basically just minor league sports, it's professional sports. So we don't think about this stuff as much as we did back in the day, but like, wasn't that supposed to be part of this here? You know, the opportunity to change people's lives, and Dajuan Harris's life has been changed by coming to Kansas. And I think that's really cool. I thought it was interesting, the KJ Adams part where he shouted out, "Thank you to my true fans," because obviously these guys go on social media, these guys go on X or whatever, and they're seeing some of the hate that is spewed about him. It's unfortunate. And, you know, if I were in their shoes, I probably just wouldn't have social media. I don't even like social media as is, but that's a story for another day. So they see it. And so I found that interesting because, you know, I don't know. I thought that was just kind of a good way to kind of frame it from him there. There was also the Zeke Mayo kind of moment of talking about when he was, you know, first got the opportunity and being in Bill Self's office and all that stuff. And that was kind of cool too, from some of the best senior day speech moments. Okay, next game award is the One More Year award, and that goes to Diggy Coit, something I touched on a little earlier. He did not go through the senior day festivities. And what that tells you is, knowing that there's this whole JUCO thing started by Diego Pavia, where you could basically get an extra year. And Diggy has been very vocal about, you know, wanting to use that, and that he loves being at Kansas and this opportunity and stuff. And the coaching staff seems to really like him. Seems like a very hardworking kid that's constantly getting up shots, seems to be content in whatever role he needs to do for the team that day. If it's score more points, if it's, have a bit smaller role on that specific day. He's just going to try to do the very best that he can, and mentally tough player, which is good for Bill Self. So it seems like everything connects here that would make you think Kansas would use him for another year. And we think of, next year, you're going to want some returners, right? You're going to want some guys who know what's going on. And especially if you have somebody who is content, if he ends up being the sixth man or seventh man on next year's team, which we've found like that seems to be the case. Why would you not want that guy to come back if he's a hard worker and all those things? So the fact he doesn't go through senior day kind of just cements it that, like, yeah, they're going to bring him back. So I'm just going to start assuming that Iggy Coit will be part of the next year's roster. Not that we completely haven't, but that would be more confirmation, so to speak. Okay, next award is the intriguing Tommy Lloyd quote of the game for possible future reasons. This is a long award, but this is something Tommy Lloyd, who's the head coach at Arizona, said after the game. He said, I'm an Arizona guy, and I love Arizona. This is not an indictment on our fans, but we got work to do. There's a gap. There's a gap between Kansas and Iowa State and us in these game day atmospheres and their fan support. It was awesome today. I was just out there listening to their senior speeches. I wasn't listening. I had to speak on the radio, but 90% of the fans are still there 20 minutes after listening to the senior speeches. It's pretty special. And the reason I bring that up is there's going to come a time here. Who knows? Could be a couple of years, could be in 5 years, whatever. Bill Self hangs him up. Bill Self retires. Who knows? Maybe that old San Antonio Spurs job finally comes a knocking now that Greg Popovich is stepping away from this season, although maybe he'll be back next year. I don't know. Who knows what happens, right? But let's say Bill Self goes another 5 years and then he retires. Let's say it's 2 years and he retires. Either way, when you're looking at the short list of coaches, and we'll do an updated, we did one last offseason, we'll do another one this offseason of our updated, coaching higher tiers, so to speak, for whenever Bill Self is done. Tommy Lloyd last year was in my top tier with, I forget how many guys I had in that top tier. I don't know, 3 or 4 guys, maybe. He was one of them. And he would still be there for me. And so I don't know where I would specify out, like if I was saying, oh, Nate Oates or Todd Golden or whatever, like how do you rank those? I don't know, but they would all be in the top tier to me. And so I do find it interesting that, maybe that, maybe the what went down in the game, maybe how the fan support was, all that stuff. Maybe that helps you possibly get Tommy Lloyd if that's the direction that things end up going down the road. I don't know. Who knows? Okay, best moment of the game. I mean, just to open the game right off the rip. Hunter to KJ Adams on that alley-oop to open up the game. And just in general, KJ with, 3 dunks, I think, in the first 5 minutes of the game. That was a great moment for the game. There was a moment where Zeke Mayo hit like a step-back corner 3 to go up 35-25. That was a cool shot. You don't normally see step-backs a lot from the corner. I feel like you see them from up top a little bit more. The Mayo 3 ball that put you up 73-68. It was really good ball movement, and Rylan Griffin had like a good look from the corner, but he passed it up to give a great look to Zeke Mayo, and it was good ball movement even before that, and put you up 5. Then you're up 73-70. You miss your first shot. I think Hunter missed the first one, which didn't have a lot of misses, but that was one of the few ones, and you were able to get it back, and of all people, to get the offensive rebound and stick it back in, it was Dajuan Harris, who, you might not know this, but Dajuan Harris has not been this gargantuan offensive rebounding magnet throughout his career so far at KU. He actually had 2 offensive rebounds, by the way, for Kansas in that game. I'd be genuinely curious. I should go back and look at this, but when is the last time that Dajuan Harris had an offensive rebound this year at KU? There had to have been one on like a long rebound or something, or like a long offensive rebound that was on a 3 ball or something like that. I'm actually going to go look at that right now. Okay, let's see. We had 3 against Colorado in the regular season game. So how about that? Yeah, if you're looking for most recent offensive rebounds. So he had 2, like I said, but theoretically, if you just said, whatever, I'm trying to think how to phrase this. He had not had an offensive rebound in a game since February 15th against Utah. So 5 games between without an offensive rebound, and he gets a huge offensive rebound stick back. The improbability made it great, put you up 75-70. And then the one that puts it away, kind of the same way you started the game. It wasn't your final points, but it was the one that felt like the nail in the coffin. Dajuan Harris throws the lob. KJ Adams dunks it, makes it 79-72. Rest is history for KU. Worst moment of the game, I mean, Trey Townsend, like repeatedly getting left open for three and just nailing them. He hadn't been a super consistent 3-point shooter, but as is tradition, went off in this one a little bit. Them getting that really end of first half, start of second half run, right, where you had an opportunity to extend the lead, you're missing free throws, then you give up, scores late at the end of the first half. You give up a bucket right at the end of the first half. They get an and one to start the second half, although I think they missed the free throw. That was not a great, I guess, stretch of moments for KU during the game. There was there was one like yo-yo moment where it's like, okay, bad moment. Caleb Love hits a three. It's 54-53. Arizona's up. And that was after KU was up the double digits at that point. But then you go down, Dajuan Harris eventually gets a three. You go up 56-54. Then Townsend gets another three. So now they're up by one again. Then you get the turnover from Hunter Dickinson that ends up giving up a free bucket kind of the other way on a Caleb Love layup at like 68-66. But he ended up battling back from there and obviously had the last laughs in the end. More good moments than bad moments in this one for KU. Please know more. That is going to be our AJ Storr here. He played 8 minutes in this game. He was -8 on the plus minus. And he was 0 for 4 from the floor. He was 0 for 2 from 2. He was 0 for 2 from 3-point range. At this point, can we just be done with this experiment? And like I said, I think AJ Storr is going to go somewhere else and he'll put up numbers. Like, I still think there's talent in there, but at this point, like, is it helping anyone? You're looking over the last 4 games now. AJ Storr is 1 for 10 shooting over the last 4 games combined. And I don't even want to know what the turnovers is in that situation or what some of the defense stuff is. Like, can we just move on? Can we just rip the Band-Aid? No more rotation minutes. Just spread it out to the other guys. I don't know. Appalling stat of the game. Arizona's been a great offensive rebounding team. That was their 3rd lowest rebound rate of the season. It was just the 6th time they've been below 30%, and it was well below 30% at 23. So Arizona being held well below. Offensive MVP has to be Hunter Dickinson, 15 of 23 from the floor, 33 points. Easy selection there. He was hitting from everywhere. Some of the turnarounds he was making, some of the hook shots he was making, the mid-range shots he was making, he was just money all over the floor for KU. Unbelievable performance. And then defensive MVP, honestly, I'll give a little bit of credit to Rylan Griffin here, who I think was matched up probably a fair amount on Del Orso, who was like their best perimeter 3-point shooter, Arizona. He only had 3 points and an 89.0 rating in his 14 minutes. So I think you give a little bit of credit there. But I guess it'd have to be Hunter and KJ because you look at it, Arizona, good offensive rebounding team, only had 7 offensive rebounds. Hunter and KJ had 11 defensive rebounds combined. And then you also look at it, Vassar, the center for Arizona, didn't really do anything on offense. I think you give the 2 bigs credit for KU on the defensive end. All right, what's next for KU men's basketball? That on the other side in the Big 12 tournament. This episode of the show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can go live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth-quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. You can get futures right now on college football. You want to bet on KU football to win the Big 12, or you can get Jalen Daniels to win the Heisman Trophy, right? You can also bet on who's going to win different conference tournaments. So, like, if you just want to have fun with it and pick some of the ones at different brackets, you want to have fun with this one. You think this Arizona win is going to be the thing that turns it around for KU. They are plus 1,200 to win the Big 12 tournament. Don't think you'll ever see odds that high again with Bill Self. Who knows? But right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA and the Locked On Podcast Network. Finishing things up on this episode of Locked On Jayhawks, what is next for KU men's basketball? So it's obviously the Big 12 tournament, and KU will be awaiting on Wednesday night. So the Big 12 tournament will get started on Tuesday, and that'll be the I don't know, I guess that's the first round, and then KU is part of the second round. and then they're trying to make it to the quarterfinals. It gets a little more complicated with the number of teams. But basically, the top 8 teams all got first round buys. The top 4 teams get 2 buys, essentially. And so Kansas is the 6th seed here, and the 11 seed is Utah. The 14 seed is UCF. So the winner of that game, which obviously they beat UCF both times, the home game was oddly closer than the away game. Utah they lost to. Now that was a road game at Utah, and that was probably the worst 1-week stretch for KU, given what happened in both games. Also, Utah's fired their coach since then. So, like, there could be an element of, okay, would you rather just try to get revenge on a team as opposed to having to beat a team a third time? But you've also looked better against UCF. I guess I would prefer it to be UCF, knowing how Utah likes to, shoot a lot of threes and stuff. But it's going to be a game you should be able to play your game and win the game regardless. Like, it shouldn't matter who you play. Obviously, you can lose. We've seen them lose to Utah. We saw them almost lose to UCF. But if you play your game, you will win. And then if you win that, you would get to the quarterfinals where you play the 3 seed with Arizona. Now, they're going to be on the late night side of the bracket. I believe 8:30 is when the UCF-Utah game is. That's when they'll play their game on Wednesday night. That's when they would play again on Thursday. That's when they would play again on Friday if they make it to the semifinals. So a lot at stake with the NCAA tournament seeding this year, probably more than ever for Kansas. Other years it might have been the difference of 1 seed line or something back and forth for KU. This year, it could be 2 seed lines, right? It could be the difference of being a 7 seed or a 5 seed, depending how long you go. And it could be an 8 seed or a 6 seed, right? There's a wide variety and wide variance for where KU could end up. So very important Big 12 tournament for the KU men's team. That'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. You can find our show anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page. We'll be back at you on Tuesday's episode to get more in depth about the Big 12 tournament path for KU and kind of taking a look at what the Big 12 tournament could do for them in terms of the NCAA tournament, as well as a little Big 12 tournament round 1 preview later this week against whoever they end up playing between UCF and Utah. See you on the next edition of LOJ.